what makes a good guide? And I guess that is, that's an individual preference, but Janice Phelps's article is a really good, indicator of some of the qualities that we expect, and the people that I'm working with and the people I'm bringing into my team, embodying these qualities, spiritual wisdom, a humble spiritual wisdom, lived experience of altered states, including, psychedelics, as well as other modalities. It might be drumming, trance, meditation, and have a rich understanding of multiplicity across culture and diversity of mental health and neurodiversity, and are able to take on feedback, as well as provide opportunities for the client to be empowered through reflection and humility. I think is one of the most important aspects of a guide, making sure that the guide is not inserting themselves too much into your story. You're in a highly vulnerable, heightened, flexible space, and it's really important that not too much dogma or indoctrination, any of that's occurring when you're in these spaces. They should be grounded and empathetic. Should hopefully have had a dark night of the soul of their own, so they've had to experience that journey home, as Jung phrases it, where you broken down, dissolved, don't have meaning, not sure where you fit in the larger cosmology, and somehow through courage and through exploration you find your way home to self and to meaning making. And some things to consider, has this person been doing this work long, or have they done a course on psychedelics and are just really excited to get started? Are they jumping before they're ready? Do they have a lot of contemplative practices to support their work? Sound healing, meditation, movement, really looking into their larger body of work that's not just the psychedelic. Are they going to help you prepare and integrate? And they might not. They might just offer the dose session, but some of them aren't that good at educating and making sure that you're linked into prep and integration, because their sole focus is the ceremony. And you find this in medicine alters, because there's often a community that can support and sustain a lot of the connection, but they might leave out, referral to a psychiatrist, checking the medication, specific, physical symptoms that need work afterwards. So just really making sure that you've got a bit of balance between that, the science as well as the more spiritual domains. And are they rigid in their beliefs? And does that resonate with you? The people that I work with that have deeply embedded in ritual and lineage, they welcome and support anyone at that altar, any belief. Everything's offered up as a metaphor. It's to be curious. There is no requirement for belief, and there's no there's deep celebration of multiplicity. So I encourage people, if you are going to an altar that has as that deep lineage, to explore, are they actually creating space for freedom of thought and for self-empowerment? And that's where the deeper healing will lie. Yeah, I think I mentioned some of this. Self-awareness and ethical integrity. When you're looking for a guide or a retreat centre or a community to be part of, what are the ethics of this community, and how are they responding to ruptures in therapy, into challenges at the altar, and how are they supporting people through these dark nights, and also the integrity of touch in the community and any sexual relationships. Being really careful, being in non-ordinary states. You want to make sure you're safe and that you've got word of mouth referrals and that you've done your research.
So the psychedelics do open us up to this journey of self-knowledge and an exploration of who we are and who we want to be. And in preparation for that, it can be quite helpful to look from the ground up to see where we are right now. So that includes an awareness of our sleep patterns, of our nutrition, of our body, and going into a journey seeking to align some of these foundational needs. Thinking of, again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we want to have some base here. Now, if there's some sleep dysregulation, doesn't mean you can't have a journey. I think it's also just being aware that that may be something you're looking to explore and work on in the journey. Then moving into environment and safety. Do you have somewhere safe to go home to? Do you have somewhere that you feel comfortable going home to? Is that space organized and ready for the self that has just experienced that journey? Who can you speak to in your community afterwards? As the challenge of sometimes individuals are exploring this quite courageously and quite independently, but if you bring these ideas and experiences to somebody who's never encountered them, it can be quite confronting. That can derail your own progress and your own journey. Nice to share, but for yourself, having some, whether that be a therapist or friends who have encountered these spaces before. And then looking at the ways that you regulate emotion. What are your particular tendencies? How do you experience anxiety? How do you shift out of anxiety? What helps? Knowing what helps. And potentially bringing those either skills or objects or whatever they are into a session. Knowing your values, so you can call on them. And so you can know if there's a part of you or an experience or something that comes up in the experience which isn't value aligned. You go, oh, that's not for me. You can know these things. Obviously, we're open to exploring, but having a sense of those deep anchors of meaning in your life. And other ways that you like to express. Maybe it's just through how you relate to others, artful relating. Maybe it's a particular creative capacity and you can bring that into the session. And how would you like for this session to connect you? If you're not bringing it in, maybe you feel disconnected. How would you like to be connected to your sense of self-expression and creativity moving forwards? And what's your relationship to the mystery? And knowing that there's no fixed way and there's no right way to talk about peak experience, mystical experience, connection to nature or the universe, whatever language suits you, and knowing that we can be quite personal with how we describe these experiences, and you don't have to fix on anyone else's belief structure or scheme. And the key way of knowing about our own particular, for example, emotional regulation needs is attachment style.
I think it's really powerful to do this work, to have a deep look at your own attachment style and that of your primary caregivers, whoever raised you, and how that may have shaped how you relate in the world to yourself and to others, because it will most likely be amplified in the psychedelic context, either relationally to the medicine or to the guide, or even the people in the room or the community you're part of. And as we move around here, we can see there's a range of attachment styles. So we've got preoccupied. Are you suffering from low self-esteem and sense of self-worth, and you have that need for close relationships, but fear of rejection and difficulty trusting? Something like MDMA, is really, really good for this, because it gives people the capacity to feel love in their body, and often love and compassion for themselves that they may never have experienced before, and to be able to talk and connect and hug and feel safe with others. And mescaline is also, which are really, really good for this as well, and particularly when it's done in a community setting, feeling part of an altar by the fire, feeling love in your body, feeling held by the people in the room. Another example of an attachment style is disorganized. Again, low sense of self-worth, avoid social situations and groups, fearful of intimacy with others and self. And again, it might be a stepwise approach to medicine, some CBD to help ground into the body, MDMA to open up that empathy for self and compassion, and community medicine for social connection, and also psilocybin, because even though a disorganized attachment style, you might be propelled into the disorganized mind, the cosmic mind, which psilocybin can give you, it is often held within that larger sense of being part of a greater whole. And many people come back with this feeling of, I belong, I'm part of something, and that I guess avoidance and fear, and can particularly if the default mode network is shut down and those pathways are lit up, we know that can really target fear and self-esteem. We've got dismissing. Some people have high self-esteem, but I'd be curious to reflect, is it inflated? Is it coming from a place of elements of potential narcissism or just neglect and deep wounding. Is this self-esteem a shield for deep pain? They've got low desire for social connection. They're dismissing of real intimacy. They don't know how to regulate or move with actual real intimacy. And they're often really independent people. And so, I encourage you to reflect if this is, we often have aspects, little aspects of all of these styles. But again, with dismissing, having medicine that might open you up, like MDMA, ayahuasca for surrender. Often in ayahuasca, that sense of being strongly independent, or I can do this, I don't need anyone. Often that is broken down and you are deeply humbled, and realizing that you need, there's a lot that we need from each other when we're, trying to work towards symbiosis with plants and the world, and secure. And, many people go into psychedelics with a secure base where they've had a safe childhood, they've had good parents who could regulate and make them feel, like they belong and they have meaning. But there is always space for more. We've always got, potential for higher states of self-worth and social responsibility and intimacy and autonomy. So I encourage, when I work in preparation with people, where do they sit on this spectrum? How much work have they done in this space? Are they aware that these projections might come up in the medicine and with their guides? And are they aware that some things could be amplified as well? It could get worse before it gets better. But if you have the information, you can then target the intervention and the self-care around it. Yeah, so I mentioned some of the medicines that can work, but I guess the anxious personality type, said MDMA, psilocybin, and mescaline can be great for this, particularly if there's an ego dissolution. Sometimes being catapulted into anxiety and through it, people often come back and have this stabilization of bravery and curiosity. And it's not that they won't experience anxiety again, but they've experienced it on a cosmic level that has then provided them with this deep release and trust in self. And with dismissive avoidant, again, psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca, MDMA, and MDMA a favorite with just that self-compassion, that empathogen for in the body and for others, and the ability to hold, respect and love for your story, for your childhood, for everything that child went through, and even the story of the others who may have caused the harm, but being able to have that higher level order thinking and compassion for, the journey that we're all on together. And fearful avoidant, they've noted particularly in ketamine, and ketamine's becoming more popular in Australia in a clinical setting. It can be done through a nasal spray or through IV, intramuscular or IM. And they've noted that with ketamine, it can actually dissociate you from your protectors. So all these barriers that you have up, dissociative elements, psychological structural elements where you have barriers to connecting with people and relating to people or exploring your own trauma story, ketamine actually dissociates you from that and opens you up to facing your fears and memories and relationships. And it's really synergistic with internal family systems work as well. And you may be familiar with these terms, but it's something to hold in mind, I think, not just in psychedelics, but in our relationships with our family, with our children. Projection. Are we projecting our stuff onto the medicine, onto the altar, onto the guide, onto our friend? No, I guess there's some common ones. So spiritual bypassing. Often when people do psychedelics, they get super excited and they get a big upgrade in their metacognitive capacities or insights or downloads. But with that can come inflated ego and actually skipping vital steps of stabilization and integration. So I encourage people to remain humble in their journey. And am I skipping stuff? Have I not looked at this aspect of my psyche? Am I preaching about psychedelics without knowing the full range of risks and challenges that can emerge in the psychedelic space? Many people want to be a healer. And we're all healers. Obviously, we've all got huge capacity to heal. but are we doing this from a place of ego and a place of urgency or needing to fill a void? Or are we doing this from a space of, growth and vitality and reciprocity with others, and getting involved in other people's experiences, giving advice to other people in the psychedelic space before it's warranted, or projecting, your journey onto someone else's. This is often stuff to be curious about in the group space, when people finish taking the medicine and afterwards, just be mindful of your energy and projecting it onto the others. We talk about transference and countertransference. So where we unconsciously transfer feelings and attitudes towards a person. And it might be, in the medicine, you might experience the guide as an ex-lover, or it might be a reflection of yourself or a parent. Hopefully the guide is strong enough to hold that complexity and to be able to talk about it so that you can work through any feelings of shame. But it's very common in particularly high doses where there can be shape-shifting, and the guide will be a mirror of your inner landscape. And it can be very challenging, particularly if sexual feelings come up. Experienced guides should make this feel safe and contained and be able to not shame you, because it's very natural and very common. And likewise, there can be projections and countertransference in the room. Guides are still human beings. Guides need to be able to have their own platform for reflection and unpacking the psychedelic experience, because they too will have, countertransference with you or the group at some point. They might feel like they need to take care of you like a parent. They might even have a fleeting attraction. There's nothing wrong with these thoughts. It's the action and what people do to keep each other safe and take responsibility. So a safe therapist will be able to address all these areas. But I encourage you to use these stages as medicine for your journey. Projections are fascinating to catch and work with. Transference, countertransference, they're all medicine as long as you're aware and self-reflective and able to take some accountability with it.
So I guess this slide is designed to explore why these preparation aspects are so important to think about, grapple with, and play with, because as we mentioned earlier, not every psychedelic experience is transformative or leads, in this case, of the image on the left here, to remission from, in this case, depression. What I find interesting here in this graph is the character of the experience of responders versus non-responders. So you see on the purple line those who entered remission from depression in a more sustained way, experienced unity, a spiritual experience, a blissful state, insightfulness, and low anxiety. Whereas non-responders didn't access any of those mystical or peak qualities, but did experience anxiety. And further, what has actually been found in further analysis of this difference is it's not so much the experience of anxiety in these clinical settings, it's the duration of anxiety. So moving in and out of state is actually a really powerful skill, and practicing and being able to embody shifting from anxiety to ease or courage or connection in an acute psychedelic experience is deeply transformational, but getting stuck in anxiety doesn't lead to the responses and the outcomes we're hoping for. So how do we minimize anxiety and increase what may be described as flow? And flow is a concept developed by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who studied the lives and the characteristics of highly creative, successful individuals. And he described an optimal state, flow, as the best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Optimal experience is thus something we make happen. And it's a balance between our current skill level and the challenges that are before us. So in the case of anxiety, the challenge level of the experience, so the set and the setting, is too high. So how do we improve skills? How do we decrease the challenge and maximize flow in these states of great transformative potential? So I like to explore this partially by going into creative thinking. There's two aspects of creativity. And one is divergent thinking, the expansion of ideas, brainstorming, and exploring new ways of thinking and opportunities.